Hey guys, it's James here again. Welcome back to another video. I hope you are all well. So today I'm going to be talking about how exactly I process and remember everything that I read when I'm going through books, audio books, whatever medium that I'm consuming my reading content through. It's an important subject. I think when it comes to reading, it's not just about reading books, it's actually drawing the knowledge, what we get from the books. We could read 100 books, but if we don't draw the knowledge from the book and then actually implement it, then there was really no point in reading it. You see all these people who are going through saying, I've read all these books, but then you think, well, how much things from these books have you implemented? And the likelihood is not a lot. So today I want to sort of break down to you exactly how I go through books, draw knowledge from them, and how I actually go about implementing the knowledge from books. And hopefully when you guys when you guys are reading your next book, you can implement some of these ideas, and hopefully you'll be implementing a lot of the ideas from the books you read. So let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first starting point, of course, is reading the book. So either you might be reading on a Kindle like myself, or you could be reading a physical book. Whichever way, I consume it in all different ways. I do audio books, I do obviously using Audible. I'm not sponsored today, but Audible, if you fancy sponsoring me one day, would love to hear from you. We've got Kindle, and then we've obviously got physical books. Most of the time, well, I'm doing all three really, but most of the time I do Audible and I'm on my Kindle. But I do read physical books now and then, but since I've got my Kindle, I've been transitioning to that a lot. So when I'm going through a book, this is just primarily for Kindle and reading books, you want to be highlighting things. So when you see a key point, get it down, highlight it, because it's the starting point of doing it. You don't want to highlight for highlighting's sake, and you could go through a whole book and highlight and then not care about it. That's obviously going to come in, as you're going to see in a minute. So what I'll do is highlight all the key points that I find. If it's the Kindle book, I'll use the Kindle highlighter, or if I'm doing an actual physical book, then I'll use a highlighting method which I learned from a guy called Alfie Valentine, who's a real legend. Alfie, if you ever watch this, thank you for giving me this idea. I watched him on Instagram doing this, my friend Reese sent it to me, and ever since then I've used this method of highlighting. So when I'm going for a physical book, any of the golden nuggets, I'll use a highlighter itself. And then I've got one of these, 4 coloured ballpoint pens that where you get red, blue, green and black. So the blue underlines what I do is the whys and justifications, so these are reasons why you should be doing things. Black underlining and black writing in general, these are my thoughts and obviously actions, what are being recommended in the book. The red underline is warnings of things obviously you shouldn't be doing. And then lastly, the green underlining is the how-tos. So that way, it's a good way of being able to synthesise the knowledge from the book and being able to sort of categorise it. And then, as I get to the end of each chapter of the book, I'll then I'll type up all the highlights, the knowledge I've got. So if it's from the written book, I can do it that way, or if it's from the Kindle highlighting, you can use something like Booksision, which I spoke to you guys about in my why you should how I've upped my reading game with my Kindle video. You can use Booksision, and you basically log into your Kindle on there, hit the Booksision button, and then it will process all your highlights, and you can then copy and paste them and put them into your Notion or a Word document, whichever way you go about processing. So that is the first step of how I process and go for my reading. Okay, so you've gone through the chapter, you've done your highlights, your underlines, etc. This is where we can bring back in if you're an audiobook listener again. So what you can do now, you've reached the end of the chapter, you've got your highlights written up. Next thing I'll do is I'll write a summary of the chapter. So the key things that I've learned in general, discussing the highlights of the book, just a short little paragraph or a long one if you feel that way about the chapter, just discussing what you've learned. It helps to reinforce the knowledge, what you've drawn from that chapter, and process it in your mind. So for example, say, you've just read the quick capture chapter of GTD. You're going to write down the key takeaways for that, how you think you could implement it, and what the key lessons are from that chapter. Again, say if it was the projects chapter of GTD, you could be talking about, all right, these are the ways that Dave Allen recommends, going through projects, this is how he recommends doing the weekly review. You're summarising that chapter itself, and it helps you to process those lessons. Okay, so moving on from that, we're going to do that chapter by chapter by chapter until we get to the end of the book. Once I've got to the end of the book, and it's done, I'm like, woohoo, another one on the list. What I'll then go and do on my Notion is I'll have a highlighted section where I'll have my overall takeaways from the book. So this is where I'll have usually the top 5, maybe more if I feel the need to, but the top 5 overall takeaways from the book. I'll type them up, and again, it helps to sort of process the knowledge what you've got from the book, and to refine what you found most helpful. You've gone through all the chapters, and these are the things what you most think is going to aid your life and what you'd most like to go about implementing. So that's what I'll do there, and then I'll write up an overall summary of the book, which then I could pass on to say someone else, and it would give them a good idea, what the book's about, what the key takeaways are from that book, and how it could help their lives. So that way, as you'll see here, when I'm revisiting, I can read that summary and think, these are the things that I've learned from this book. Yes, I need to go back through these notes. Let's see what I've been implementing, and let's see if there's any new ideas which I haven't been implemented yet from my notes. Okay, so that was steps 3 and 4 all rolled into one. So step 5 after that, once I've gone through my notes, written up my summary, I'll then go through my notes, go through my takeaways, and think, right, these are the ways that I can start implementing this book, and then add it into my tasks list. So I have the GTD framework for, my task management. So all these ideas of tasks, so it could be, going about writing up projects, or it could be implementing habit stacking, it could be, something from traction, implementing the vision traction organizer. I'll then go about adding this in to my tasks list, and then when it comes around to my weekly planning session, my weekly review, I'll then be able to process these tasks and think, right, this is when I can fit it in. I could fit this task in next week, I could fit this in a month's time, this is when I should be planning on doing it. And that way we can then go about actually implementing the lessons from the book. This is where I think it sets apart what I do with my reading from what Joe Bloggs may do with reading, because it's all well and good reading it and trying to unconsciously implement things, but if you try consciously to implement things from the books what you read, you're then more likely to do things, and then you're more likely to see a change in your life from the things that you've been reading about. So that is how I go about adding it into my weekly tasks and what I do. Okay, so the last thing that I'll do to finish it all off is in my Notion, I actually have sort of a reminder section with my book tracker, which will then be a date to revisit the book. So what I'll tend to do is maybe set it for 3 months time to start with, and then after that perhaps 6 months time, and so on and so on, as I see fit, if I've implemented the book, because I think it's always good to revisit things. I used to watch a guy called Simon Clark back when he was called Simon Ox Fizz, and he spoke about studying effectively and the importance of spaced repetition of knowledge. And I think the same goes for anything, any type of knowledge, with self-development, business, personal development. I'll set a date to go and revisit these things, and that way it keeps it fresh in your brain. And if you've already implemented it, it's always good to think, am I still implementing this? Did I do this or did I not? How successful has this idea been? And it's just good to process ideas over time and to revisit the knowledge of the books. It keeps it in your head and helps you to keep track in general of how successful a book's been in your life. And that way, when you're looking at other books and that, or for other books on that subject, you can know whether a book is more likely to be, to be good for your life, and you'd be more likely to have success in implementing those ideas or not, so you can make more wise book choices. Okay guys, so that is how I go about remembering, implementing, processing, all that shebang to do with reading. That's how I go about doing it and getting it into my life. Hope you guys have enjoyed it as always. If you have, then it would mean a lot if you could drop a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. We're nearing the 100 subscriber mark now. We're getting there. Woohoo! The first 100 of many. That's what we like to hear, guys. But thank you so much for all the support on the channel. It really does mean a lot. And yeah, as always, if you'd like to hear from me on my newsletter each weekend, you can subscribe through the link below. I'll send you out practical tips, ideas, things that I've learned each week, videos that I've watched, which I think could be of help to you guys. And yeah, I hope you guys continue to enjoy that newsletter. And as always, guys, I'll see you on my next video. Take care, guys. Bye.